I'm Anna Hibbert, and this is my persuasive speech. So some of you may recognize this picture. This is Michael Brown, and this is the man who was killed after the Ferguson events that sparked the Black Lives Matter movement. This is Jeremy Martis, who is a 6-year-old who was shot and killed by police after his father was being pursued for a warrant. And this is Tamir Rice, who is a 12-year-old who was killed by police because he was carrying a toy gun. And then this is Autumn Steele, who was accidentally shot and killed by police after they were trying to shoot her dog. All of these people have something in common, that they were all shot and killed by police, mostly, and many other people also have sadly had this fate too. Actually, in last year alone, there were 1,010 people who were killed by a gun wound by police, which accounts for 9% of total gun homicides in all of America. I believe that is too large of a number, as many other countries that have a stricter gun policy on what cops can carry guns, that there's much less deaths. And I think if we base a policy off of that we could save hundreds of lives. So to start off, you can have a justifiable homicide when a police kill someone, which by definition and by Merriam-Webster is a death that by accident, by misadventure, in self-defense, or in performing a duty. And these things would have to be determined by a judge to clarify whether or not it was deemed a justifiable homicide. So out of those 1,010 people, who is being killed? Well, 1 in 5 of these people are unarmed. Only 1 in 5 of those 1 in 5 of that 1,010 were fired shots at the officer before being killed. 13% resulted in died because they committed a violent crime prior, and 15% of them were African American aged 13 to 34, which is 5 times more than the white men of the same place. Altogether, only 255 deaths of those were considered justifiable. So a vast minority were considered justifiable, and that means there's a lot of unjustified deaths. So you may be thinking, well, is there more violence against police that's occurring? And you would think by what's happening in the news over the past, from 2006 to 2015, there's been a very large increase in the amount of different news sources that have been reporting on violence towards police. When in actuality, if you look at the graph at the same time, there has been a decrease in that. Overall, we are at a 45-year low of violence towards police, because if you look at the whole graph from 1970 on, there has been a significant decrease. So overall, that may be some of the problem, but overall it is not the full problem. And in addition to that, there's about 60 million times a year that there are interactions between civilians and police. 0.09% of them result in the police officer being assaulted, 0.02% the police officer was injured, and in 0.00008% they were killed, which accounts to be about 50 officers in total. That overall is much less than 1,000 people who are killed on the other side. Now, Seth Stoughton was a former police officer that wrote an article in The Atlantic who talked about what it's like to be trained, and he said that there's a lot of issues. For one, their first law of enforcement is that they need to end their shift alive, which I think is a pretty viable thing to want, but at the same time, their job is to be protecting people, and the way that they teach this is a lot of times they're inciting fear into the officers. They show them a lot of dash cam footage of different officers being beaten and gunned down, and they also do a lot of hands-on activities where they are shown how easy it is to be harmed. They're pretty much a lot of times being shown how easy it is for them to get hurt, and that any single time they come in contact with someone, they could get injured or killed. And a lot of times people say that it's better, a lot of officers say that it's better to be judged by 12 people if something bad happens rather to be carried by 6. Now, on the other side of things, there are about 20 countries who have a very strict policy about people who carry guns, about police officers that carry guns. Great Britain is one of those that does it very successfully. In 2013, they had 0 justifiable deaths, justifiable homicides, while the U.S. had 461. At the same time, about a third of their officers feel safer without a weapon, even when they're being attacked. Their training process is a very rigorous selection process where they have to do a lot of fitness tests, psychological appraisals, and exams. And once they are hired, then they have to do a lot of drills and problem solving to show how there are a lot of other ways that they can handle situations without being defensive. And in addition to that, they have to be an officer for several years before they can apply for a gun. And even when they do that, it's still a very difficult process to obtain one. My proposal is that we use some of the things that Great Britain and other countries are using to kind of implement into ours, and it would be a 3-tier proposal. The first tier would be to change the application, so that way we're ensuring that we're hiring people who can do the job and are physically able to, and also review who we already have to see who should be able to continue holding a gun, and if there's anyone who is currently an officer that maybe is not, for one reason or another, not in a fit position to be able to do that. The second step would be to train everyone, and that way to do the same kind of drills that Great Britain is doing with their officers to show them that there are a whole lot of other ways that you can get yourself out of certain situations without necessarily resulting in shooting someone. And they would also have to do some shifts where they would have to do maybe a shift without a gun, so that way they could practice it in the real world. And then the third would be to finally implement everything and restrict the guns altogether. This is already in practice. This man is 63-year-old Joseph Houseman, who had a rifle and was in a 40-plus minute argument with police where he was refusing to produce identification, refusing to put his gun down. It ended, the police never shot at him and never were aggressive towards him, never made aggressive action towards him, and it ended with a handshake, and they got him to put his rifle down, and they found out that it wasn't actually loaded. And this is just an example how it is possible to do this, and it has happened in America. So is it possible, will this actually work? Are we endangering the lives of police officers because they don't have guns on them? And I would say that is no, because yes, there would still be some officers that do have guns on them, but that would be able to use them in more severe situations. In addition, they would still have things like tasers and pepper spray. So if talking things out or trying to find a more humane way of getting things situated, they could still defend themselves. It's unfortunate that we've lost this many lives already, and I think that if we implement a solution like Great Britain has, that we would be able to save many more lives like these people. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.